February marks 5 years since the brutal rape and murder of teenager Anene Booysen, which sent shockwaves across the world and triggered angry protests countrywide. I returned to Bredasdorp in the Western Cape, where Anene died and where 4 more young girls have been violently raped and killed. Despite the gruesome details of Anene's death that made global news headlines, we find little has changed in a forgotten community.
Generations of young people grow up and they've forgotten, or they've not been exposed to the lessons that we get from the Anenes of this world. Wish that we could immortalize her and say she changed the future for our country.
Bredasdorp, February 2013. A young teenager is found raped and brutally attacked. Anene was left for dead after her attacker disemboweled her. That same day, Anene died from her injuries. I travelled to the sleepy farming town of Bredasdorp in the Western Cape to interview her shocked family to try and grasp the circumstances surrounding her murder.
Het is net onwerklik om te dink dat sy regtig nie meer daar is nie. Regtig waar. Ek het nog nie so gevoel nie, maar dit is vandag nou vir die eerste keer wat ek daar is nou bewys. Kyk, sy is nie meer daar nie, sy is nou vir altyd weg.
Nee, sy sê weer. Ek dink vir haar sê onthou 10 uur is 10 uur. 10 uur is 10 uur. Jy moet net onthou wat ek vir jou sê. En sy het vir Anene Booysen soetbakboek aangetrek. Sy is ewe happy daar weg. Okay, wys sy. Daar gaat sy. Dus ek onthou, jy weet waar mee te kry, ne? Jy weet. Sy weet by haar in haar hele verstand, ek sy lag kom soek daar wat sy is. En daar die oomblik. Toe ek nou, die...
Around the same time, the brutal death of this 21-year-old student, Eldo-Ja, after she was gang raped, sparked a nationwide protest movement thousands of kilometers away in India. The mass protest movement led to significant policy changes to address that country's national rape crisis.
2 men appeared briefly in the...
Back in South Africa, a seemingly similar mass movement was ignited by Anene's violent attack. Anene's death did not prevent a staggering 110,000 more rapes being reported to police since 2013, a figure many believe is underreported. We approached the Psychological Society of South Africa for answers.
It's, I think, an urban-rural divide as well as a class issue. So if it were somebody well-known in the urban areas, that memory would have been kept alive. But this was a young female out in the sticks. And there was an outpouring of emotion, particularly through mobilization by people in that community, that hit the headlines. Otherwise, it would have gone unnoticed.
As the 5-year commemoration date of Anene draws closer, I decide now will be a good time to return to Bredasdorp in the Western Cape. I want to put a face to another murder victim from the same community. The Western Cape High Court wraps up this latest case of rape and murder that took place in 2015, also of a teenager and also from Bredasdorp. The case dates back to 2015 when the 28-year-old Zimbabwean national Gift Sibondo is arrested for the kidnapping, rape and murder of 15-year-old Eldo-Ja. Her battered body was found hidden under Gift's bed days after she went missing. Her mother Eva says the family got increasingly worried when their daughter started spending time with the much older Gift, a so-called inloper, a term widely used in Bredasdorp to describe new residents who come from outside of town. Eva says this photo of Elda as a young girl is one of a very few that she has of her daughter.
het bij mijn dochter gepraat. Ik had vir haar gewys die foto en vir haar gesê, dis nou 'n voorbeeld. Dat het van Anene Booysen so besigheid. Maar sy het ook vir my 'n bietjie kop gegee nie. Ik maar hoe die kinders die daar luister hier vir die ouers as die ouers om terug met hulle praat.
Eva says 2 years earlier in 2013, she reported her daughter as kidnapped when Gift took Eldo without anybody's knowledge and left town. The two were tracked down and Gift was arrested, but the case of kidnapping and rape against him was later dropped.
Ons het die baie van hom gehou nie, maar hy het altyd gekom. Daar het vir my daar gestuur om my kind te kom. Daar weet ek as hy wat vir haar gestuur het naar my kind toe, maar ek het altyd geweier en vir my daar gesê, my kind los. Ek wil sê, man nie, hy sê is nog ouderdom, hy moet sy partiers van. Ek was by die welzijnkinderzorg geweest. En ik heb met haar gepraat en ik wil haar wegsturen, dat ze een beetje weg kan gestuurd raken. En wat zij weggeweest had, was ik aangemerkt bij die politiestatie. Ik heb mijn best geprobeerd.
Gift eventually convinced the teenager to move in with him, and according to her family, he would often physically abuse Elda. In 2015, the teen's body was found here, inside Gift's house. A few weeks ago, the Western Cape High Court handed down 2 life sentences in the kidnap, rape and murder case against Gift Sebondo.
Ik en mijn man en die kinders was een beetje hartzeer nog altijd, maar nou wat hij gevonden is, is ik nou blij dat hij gestraft is. Dat hij dat niet verdient voor mijn kind. Want ik zal niet weer mijn kind terugkrijgen.
Elda is one of an alarming number of other young girls who have been raped and murdered since Anene's shocking case in 2013, all within a 30-meter radius in this area. February 2015, 5-year-old Katie Williams, abducted, raped and strangled to death. May 2015, 15-year-old Eldo-Ja, raped, kicked, punched and strangled to death. April 2016, Solnita Mano, gang raped, her genitals mutilated, her naked and beaten up body found displayed outside a fence in a public area. And while I return here to the scene of Anene's bloody attack 5 years after her death, in a stunning twist of irony, a mere 200 meters away, the murder of Jodene Pieters, 16 years old, at this empty limestone factory. Here inside this empty reservoir, gang raped, her genitals mutilated, her skull crushed, and her body set alight. Shocked residents gather outside Jodene Pieters' house, a now familiar scene in this community.
Vandaag verstaan ons erg hoe die familie van Anene moest gevoel het. En hoe zoveel honderden andere families elke dag voelen. Elke dag van hierdie koerant lees en jy lees van hierdie type goed. Dan denk jy as maar net nog 'n moord en nog 'n familie. Totdat hierdie ding reg op jou eie vel kom. En dan besef jy dat dis helemaal iets anders.
En ik bedoel, 17 jaar, 16 jaar, was sy vir my geleen. Wat min was, as ek aan moet dink. Maar ek is tevrede om haar terug te gee aan haar maker.
Less than a week later, family members gather at Jodene's memorial service.
Heel dag, al dag, oral waar sy kom, alles wat sy doen, sy sing. Dat was haar passie. om te sing. Baie lief vir Kosa. Sy het in gospel en passages band gesing. Kosa gospel, Afrikaanse gospel. Vir my gevra my ma, hoekom was ek jou Kosa kindie? Want sy was baie lief om Kosa te sing.
One of the aspects that fueled the outrage following Anene Booysen's rape and murder in 2013 was the brutality of her attack. As I drive through the streets of Bredasdorp, so-called Onderdorp, a small radius where RDP houses are built close to each other, I'm struck by the similarities of the brutality of the latest attack on Jodene Pieters.
We're the only country in the world to have the high levels of violence that we do without war. The matter of rape is because of our warped socialization and a feeling of entitlement by insecure, inferior men that they can take, and because you are a chattel, you are below me, I'm already inferiorized, I have a weak sense of myself, but you are less than I am, so I can just do what I feel like to you.
When I visited Bredasdorp in 2013, I became aware of the significant impact of the migrant labour system on family life in this farming community. Many children are still raised by so-called grootmaakma's or foster mothers. It's commonplace that many of these foster arrangements are only formalized much later in a child's upbringing, if at all. This safe house in Bredasdorp, built by the local municipality after Anene's death and now operated with mostly private donations, has become a haven for many children and their mothers who flee dangerous situations at home. Former trauma counsellor Alma van As says the foster care system here is still deeply entrenched.
Ek dink daar's verskeie organisasies wat bewus is van al die goed, maar hulle werk nie saam nie. Dis my opinie. Ek dink hulle neem dit ernstig genoeg op dat dit eintlik die hoofoorsaak is van ons kinders wat so groot word, wat so gaan uitdraai en ook gaan kinders hê en die siklus gaan net aangaan en aangaan nie.
Anene Booysen was also raised by a grootmaakma or foster mother. During our interview in 2013, her foster mother, Corlia Olivier, explained.
Die polisie het daar aangekom, nee, met die oma en sy. En toe hulle vir haar, toe die oma gewys waar haar ma altyd gekom het en hulle toe gevra of ek wel oplet na haar tot die ma eendag uitsteek.
Corlia battled to cope with Anene's death and was diagnosed with cancer a few months after this interview. She passed away in 2014. I managed to meet Marco Olivier, Anene's grootmaakpa of foster father.
En eendag kom sy daar, sy vra een oggend, maandagoggend van my vrou, of die vrou nie aan die twee kinders wil kykie. Anene was nog so klein. En glo my vrou, na 6 maande, toe sy nog nie terug nie. Sê ek eendag vir die vrou, nee, nou moet ons maar ja sien toe gaan. Maar maatskaplike werker gaan sien oor die kinders, verstaan, want die ma, ons weet nie waar hulle is nie.
In a community with seemingly few positive role models for the youth, I learned that Marco was in jail at the time of Anene's murder for the rape and assault of his former partner.
Een van die beamptes een oggend na my toe gekom. En hy het vir my die storie kom vertel oor Anene. Ja, en ek was baie hartseer geweest oor die feit dat, want kyk, die kind was soos my kind. Ik nou hoor, die persoon gaat nou gearresteerd worden, verstaan. En ik had al niet gedacht dat hij hier naar te komen. Verstaan? Zulke goede zijn jullie verdachten, want zij, hoe kon het, hoe kon die ook zoiets gaan doen?
On a farm on the outskirts of Bredasdorp, another stepfather's fate is tied to that of Marco Harmse. For the first few years of his life, Klaas Rickers helped raise the boy who decades later, as a young man, would stand trial for Anene's brutal rape and murder.
He was nou nie sal ek nou sê hand uit die uit goed opgegroei. Goeie opvoeding gehad. Goeie maar na skool het ons nog eens gewag uit drank en so. Maar as hy nou by ons kom, was hy nog altyd en soos ek hom geken het wat hy groot geword.
Het jy dit als uitgesny?
Ja, mevrou, dit het ek self alles uitgeknip en so op 'n ding geplak. Ja, as die mense wel nou nie wil glo nie, kan hulle maar kom kyk hier. En by daai een ook.
I'm intrigued by these big frames in Lena's lounge, where she displays the newspaper clippings of her son's controversial case.
Hoekom het jy hierdie uitknipsels gehou? Hoekom is dit vir jou belangrik?
Dat die mense kan sien.
Lena has only seen her son once since 2014, when he started serving out his life sentence in Mangaung Maximum Prison in Bloemfontein.
Ek glo nie die goed wat hulle gesê het wat hy gedoen het, want ek ken mos my kind. Hy sal nie sulke goedes aanvang nie.
Hoekom nie? As hy self skuldig gepleit het.
Want ek glo nie daaraan hy sal dit gedoen het, mevrou want hy is nie so tipe kind nie. Want hy ken nie sulke goed nie. Kyk, 'n ma ken mos haar kind. Ek wil hê die Here moet hom die tromse diere moet die Here vir hom oopmaak. Dat hy haar vry uitstap.
I returned to the crime scene almost exactly 5 years after Anene was discovered here, her body severely beaten and mutilated and her life hanging by a thread. Except for a street named after her, there are few reminders here of the brutality faced by the shy teenager in her last 24 hours.
Nee, ons was maar nog baie hartseer geweest en dis mos iets om gou te vergeet nie. En soos die tyd kom en gaan, die jare kom en gaan en ons het nou al agter die rug. Daar is seer wat ons gehad het, soos dit. Ons dink nog altyd baie om haar. Sy bly nog baie in ons gedagtes.
Ons kinders en ons manne naam word blootgestel aan negatiewe invloede op hulle lewe deur dwelms te gebruik. Kyk, die dwelms raak al hoe sterker en sterker. Daar is die grootste probleem wat ons met sit.
Community workers in Bredasdorp say residents know exactly who are selling the drugs and where they are peddling it from.
Hulle bring drugs, hulle intimideer die mense en hulle gryp jou kind wat jy hoe goed groot wil maak om in hulle web in te kom. So ja, as hulle wil begin het met iets, moet hulle dit drug-free maak hierso.
The lives of either the perpetrators or the victims, or in some cases both, who we highlight in this documentary, have somehow been entangled with a drug problem that is so entrenched in this area. Why can law enforcers not address this problem?
These drug dens and the areas that are no-go areas, untouchables, corruption and collaboration between these drug dens with the cops, making it very difficult for society to survive and bring about ineptness among our police. We need to get rid of that.
While Police Minister Fikile Mbalula has made strong comments over the past few weeks to crack down heavily on drug dens, nothing has seemingly happened in Bredasdorp over the past 5 years to address this problem. Attempts to secure interviews with the Minister and Provincial Police for this program were unsuccessful. A mere 2 days after Jodene Pieters' murder, 2 local men from Bredasdorp were arrested and appeared in court. One of the community members who came out in support of the Pieters family is this man, Nico September, who we interviewed in 2013. Nico is the uncle of the first suspect who was initially arrested for Anene Booysen's murder 5 years ago. I arranged to meet Nico at his house in Bredasdorp. During the filming of our documentary in 2013, this man, Nico's nephew Jonathan Davids, was in police custody for Anene's murder. Jonathan is also nicknamed Zwei, and he was a good family friend of Anene. Anene whispered the name Zwei before she died, and police arrested Jonathan that same day. Another man, Johannes Kana, was also arrested alongside Jonathan, and Johannes would later confess to the rape and murder of Anene. As for Jonathan, all charges against him were eventually dropped. Jonathan says at the time of his arrest, he was unaware that Anene had died.
Ik was zaterdagmiddag dood. Nou, die politie, die spieren het mij belicht, man. Toen zondag hoor ik maar steeds dood. Ze zei, ze leven nog. Bij de hospitaal, dus zei die dokter, maar toen hoor ik maar bij die dokter. Toen die dokter nog mee onderzoek. Toen hoor ik steeds lang al dood. Een maand daarna, bij de hoofdkreuk kom ja. Toen zie ik ook maar op. Ik heb hem nog nooit gezien. Ik ken hem ook maar nog niet. Maar die man die wat ik nog leren kennen. En die tronk nou toen ik nu aankom. Dan kijk je dat ga je weten. Maar ik denk dat is hij niet. Allebei bij elkaar, ja, maar hij heeft dat niet doodgemaakt. Hij heeft op een klare ongeveer aan die tronk.
When I interviewed Jonathan's uncle Nico in 2013, he expressed his concern over growing criminal elements within Bredasdorp. I asked him if anything has changed since then.
So baie dinge het al gebeur. Ek weet nie of dinge verander het nie. Hier is absoluut niks vir ons jong mense nie. Niks ontspanningsgeriewe. Fasiliteite is maar min. So hulle wend hulle na alcohol, hulle wend hulle na drugs omdat niks anders is om te doen nie.
One of the promises made by government after Anene's murder was to establish a youth skills development centre to address the high levels of unemployment and poverty amongst the youth. The Anene Booysen Skills Centre was built in 2014 by the Department of Higher Learning at a cost of 10 million rand. Today the centre stands unused and offers nothing to the town's poverty-stricken youth. A stark reminder of the many empty promises made in Bredasdorp at the time of Anene Booysen's death.
Die grootste behoefte vir jong mense in Bredasdorp is seker werk. Daar is soveel school drop-outs. En as jy 'n skills center het waar hierdie school drop-outs 'n ambacht kan gaan aanleer, glo ek, jy spreek 'n groot deel van die probleem aan.
I requested an interview with Municipal Manager Dean O'Neill. He replied to me in writing. Exactly 5 years after her death, Anene's father returns to her grave at the local cemetery. In the weeks following Anene's brutal attack, then Minister of Women Affairs pledged to establish a national commission into the rape and violence of women and children.
I think the big one also for me is what I would term political will, which I think the good first steps were there, because the then president said to the former Minister of Children, Women and People with Disabilities, Lulu Tlingwana, go and ensure there's a plan to deal with gender-based violence or sexual violence. And that was the birth, I think, at the government level of a talk to develop a national strategic plan to deal with the scourge of violence. What happened to it 5 years later? Civil society movements are still calling for it.
A stone's throw from Anene's grave, Jodene Pieters' family buries their daughter. The irony of returning to Bredasdorp to find yet another teenage girl brutally killed weighs heavily on my mind. I wonder why, with all the indications of a national movement stirring in 2013, Anene's death did not propel us into a unified force against the growing violence inflicted on our women and our girls.
If you raise, do you remember Anene Booysen, very few people will say who, where, how, and you have to actually show them those, what happened then and the headlines for them to remember. Because we're also a denialist society. We tend to deny those things and happenings that disturb our comfort zones. So we go about it, we ignore the overwhelming presence of violence and their triggers in our environment. Wish that we could immortalize her and say she changed the future for our country in how we think about ourselves and our children.
Hy sal jou vashou. Hy sal jou nooit verlaat nie.